sitting there going like, I've only been dating this girl for like a month. Like, why am I doing this? This is ridiculous. And that's kind of how he realized that, one, he loved me, and two, that this is probably it for him too. So it's hard to explain that feeling, but for us it was very much as we were very sure, and we knew. And it was still really hard. We dated for 4 years before we got engaged, just about. And it was really hard. There were a few times where we were like, how is this going to work? But for the most part, the entire time we both knew that that's where we were headed towards. So yeah.
I just want to echo, that whole idea of peace. I think everyone here has kind of said that, and that's what it felt like for me. I pray before every date, just God, let this go well, let your will, and stuff like that. And every time we just say yes to more dates, and then we kind of from dating to like kind of making it official, at least putting a label on it, so we kind of understood what we were doing. And then we started to talk about marriage and engagement, and what that could look like. And then throughout the whole process, it really was just like very peaceful. Like, it didn't feel like I was overthinking it. It didn't feel like we were rushing it. It never felt. It didn't really feel like God was in control. And I was really trusting Him. So I just want to echo the idea of just peace.
So to give some, I guess the other side from what Sam was talking about, a little bit of context. Sam and I met kind of after a very tragic time in our lives, where my best friend, who she was dating, passed away in a car accident. And so, like she said, I was not a Christian at the time. And I remember going to, as soon as this accident happened, somebody let me know that there was going to be pretty much everybody was going over to the youth pastor's house of Sean was his name, of Sean's church and Sam's church, and kind of that was just going to be a place where people could come breathe together, and so I went. I'm not really sure why. I wasn't a Christian. I didn't know a ton of people who were going to be there, but I think I went out of maybe obligation. I don't know. I went, I knew Sam because like she was dating Sean. I knew who she was. I did not like her. She took up a lot of Sean's time, and so. However, when I got there, she was very warm and welcoming and wanted to see how I was doing, even in the midst of all of this. And the point I wanted to make is that I was not a Christian at the time. Sam was, and at this point we may not have known that we were going to get married, but she was a light at a very dark time. And so your influence in other people's lives, they may not be Christians, but your influence, it is massive. It's massive. And so, we did eventually, we were friends for a little while, and I did eventually come to the Lord. She was kind of just there with me the entire way. Like she said, she kind of got the voice from God. I did not feel like that, or if I did, I did not acknowledge that until much later on. And so it's not always going to be as soon as you start dating, God's going to tell you this is it. I knew I liked her. I knew I enjoyed being around her. I wasn't sure why, and I think it's a lot of it had to do because I was an immature Christian at the time, but at some point, God makes it abundantly clear that this is the person that is been put in your life. So, anyways.
Another question texted is, what are y'all's biggest deal with those. So what are your biggest marital or this relationship or any regrets? And how did you deal with it?
I'm just gonna control the rest of the time. Everybody's gonna get fine. No, I'm just kidding. Biggest regret for me, though, that became obvious right away was I made a poor decision in my college days and my school days to not maintain my sexual purity. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that I did not have a relationship with Christ, and I didn't have a lot of guidance there. Let me tell you, that is a hill to climb when you get married. You don't think so whenever it's happening, but when I met Samantha and realized that this was the person that I was going to be marrying, it is a battle to work through all of the baggage and untangle just that mess of making that choice. And so that's it. During my time dating, that's my biggest regret, is that I made that choice, and that we had to fight through a tough engagement period and a tough first year of marriage, and I think that had a lot to do with it.
Yeah, I'm gonna echo, copy paste what you said. Especially, when I got divorced, and I thought, okay, I'm free. What I was doing didn't work out, and so, and I think that the trick is, or the frustration is when you decide to have and engage continuously in sex outside of marriage, it's difficult because we see that in the world. We see it on TV, we see it in listening to character music, but it's almost a double-edged sword in the worst way, because you have to, like he was saying, you have to deal with that during your marriage, courting, and work through that. But then also, if you're not careful, it can set up false expectations, right? So maybe you've done something, or you've entertained, or you've gone down a certain path, and this, I really encourage you young men to be careful of this, because you can start imagining and being used to, and even if you ask for forgiveness, you can carve through your brain almost certain things that you think should happen in marriage, and that's something that, again, sex outside of marriage is very dangerous. I mean, I think there's a real reason, not just because we're old people and we're Christians, we're trying to tell you don't do something that's fun. Well, of course it's fun, otherwise nobody will do it, right? But you really have to be careful of that, because it can really form your mind, it can form your decisions, and that internally for me was hard once I got married. It's like, okay, wait a minute, not only did I do something wrong, but I've developed habits or thoughts or preconceived notions on how this should work. Now I have to work through that with my wife. Not just the fact that it wasn't pure for her, but now going forward, how does it work? And I think that can be very difficult the more you let, or the more you give in to those desires.
Yeah, just again to echo, I think when you engage in sex outside of marriage, it's something that just very gracious for me about, going back to kind of fighting. And it wasn't a huge fight with us, but it was more, I just felt, awful that I finally met like the woman I knew I was going to marry. And I think for me, so I'm just going to echo what they said, but also to add on to that is that I think for me, like, a lot of it was just, I think there's one way the world talks about it, which makes it seem like it's the best thing ever. As Matt said, I mean, obviously, there's something to it that it's fun, it's something that is pleasurable. But I think too, like, the way I felt the church taught it, it's like this thing you shouldn't do. It's like it's a big no-no, and also you get married. It's like, oh yeah, that's good. And I think the way I would like encourage you guys to think of God, it's not like it's bad and don't do it, is that it's something that's very special in that it's not about you, it's just kind of about the other person being closer with someone in an obviously intimate way. And it's the idea that it's a gift to be be able to give. I think, I don't know that's the right way to say it necessarily, but it's just kind of a gift to be able to give. And to be not being able to give it for the first time to someone that you love and you can say that this is the person I'm going to be with the rest of my life, was really hard for me. And I just felt really bad about all of that, just because I made just poor decisions. And so I think just honor that and treasure that. If you guys have that, and just really protect that. And because it's yours to give out, but you want to give it to the right person. And I think that's what maybe for the worst is that I didn't give it to the right person.
Yeah, I guess just coming from the female perspective, yeah, I think the biggest regret that I have is having sexual relationships before I got married. That was a very difficult time, and for us to go through at the beginning of our marriage, well, even just in dating before we got married, so much baggage that we bring. And I wish I would have had the foresight to know that God loved me so much to bring such an amazing person in my life that I am worth waiting for. I'm not just my husband, but for me, I'm worth saving myself for my husband. And not, doing it for marriage.
Same thing. The same thing as everybody. Being single, I do regret having had a sexual relationship in the past because now that's something that's in my head. That's something that I think about sometimes. It's something that it's something that I'm always going to have to deal with. And being committed to being single, that's something that I'm not going to be doing. Ever. Once you know what something is like, because sex is good, it feels good. It's something that you don't forget. So honestly, I wish that I had. So now it wouldn't be something that I have to struggle with.
Kind of following along this theme, I did not have sex before I got married, but I towed the line as much as I could. I made a lot of really bad decisions with a lot of different guys, and again, it kind of goes back to a lot of my own feelings of insecurity and feelings of just wanting to feel loved and feel special. And that's something that I really regret, even entering into my dating relationship with Brandon. We dated very soon after something that happened in my life. I was sexually assaulted, and very soon after that we started dating. And so the first year of us dating was really difficult in the fact that I was still learning how to find value in myself, not in another person, but through God and through other things that I hadn't been doing before. Before that, I was definitely finding worth in how men viewed me and how what I could give to other people, basically. And that was really harmful for me and harmful for our relationship as well. So that was really hard for us to get through. So even if you haven't actually had sex, the other things that you can do in relationships that lead up to that can also be just as harmful to you. So I feel like sometimes we get this sense of yeah, but there's a line and I haven't crossed that line yet, but it's not quite as simple as that. It's not as black and white. So that's what I have to say.
Well, and just going on with that, sex does feel good. It's a great thing, but there's also bad things with it, just kind of how she said. I experienced some really bad things with sex with prior relationships. And so then when I got married, I had to tell my husband, no, don't do that. That's not comfortable for me. That's an awkward, and then he's like, well, why? And then you have to go down that line of explaining, well, you can't touch me there, or you can't kiss me that way because I had a really bad experience. And this is the person I'm supposed to give myself to and enjoy those things with, and I'm telling him I can't do that. So that's really hard.
One thing I would say too is if you have made mistakes or there are things you regret, is that God makes all things new. And like we had to work through like sex before marriage and talk about that, but God is gracious and forgiving, and He can make you whole again and make a relationship something beautiful. He's merciful and good, and he does help us work through all these things on the package.
Next question, I have to build off this a little bit, but a few people message in boundaries. And so for single or engaged, or even boundaries that you would recommend to students at their stage of life that would be good for them to have, or maybe even boundaries that you have as a married couple, things that you wouldn't do, or just kind of some parameters that you guys have set up even for your married relationships. So anything on the topic of boundaries?
Honestly, I would say just have that conversation when you start, dating someone, when you enter that relationship. I know it's easier to say have that conversation than to actually have that conversation with someone, but the healthiest relationship that I was ever in started with that conversation. Just talk about, what it is that you want from dating. Talk about whether or not you are comfortable with having sex. That was part of that conversation. And it's good to have that, to communicate. Communication cannot be stressed enough. That you need to communicate with this person that you're having this relationship and spending this much time with.
One thing I would add is just encouraging you guys to set emotional boundaries for yourselves as well. When you get into a relationship, it's so easy to throw everything you have into that relationship and everything that you are. And if you are in a dating relationship, especially in high school, and you don't know who you are without that person, that is probably not healthy. I've seen that happen a lot. Even when I started dating, I knew that was a big, that was going to be a big struggle for me, because it's so easy to just put all of your worth in that other person, and that's not how relationships are designed to be. Your worth should be coming from God, and when you do get married, if you guys both are, you know who you are and you're separate people, but then you make each other better. But it's not as much of like, I am nothing without this other person. You have to be your own person. So set emotional boundaries for yourself.
I think too is that when you understand kind of what dating is, as I said, we called it Pop on the Rocks, and we had a conversation about what we were going towards. Because I knew that we were going towards marriage, and there's I can't remember the study, but the study talks about how when relationships start, when passion's really high, obviously, but as time goes on, and this relationship goes on, talks about how, I forget the term, but just basically that part of you that wants to like commit to it, the commitment part of it, grows. So like commitment's kind of usually a little bit lower because you're growing, but as you grow, that goes up, and passion typically just declines, not just for any reason, it's just, the infatuation, the honeymoon period kind of goes away at some point. But the idea behind that is that, okay, if I know that I'm wanting to go, like, if I'm wanting to do the marathon and not a sprint, the idea was to get to know Megan for who she is, what her walk of God was like, her goals were, where she wants to be, and kind of understand. Just wanted to get to know her to also see, like, is this the person that I want to walk through life with? And so, sex is a very, it's not an important part, I guess, when you get into marriage, but for like all stuff leading up to that, like, it's a very superficial part. It doesn't mean anything. It's really about the person that you're needing to know, the person that you're needing to, try to understand. So I guess it's also just remembering like what dating for marriage actually means. Like, for going for that long-term goal, it's not just getting married, but being married for until death do you part type idea. So I think if you keep that in mind too, it's easy to kind of set those boundaries, like, especially if you're having those conversations. That this time frame dating and engagement, really to get to know you and to prepare for marriage?
Well, I'd say for any of you that are like me, that don't like boundaries and tend to run through them and get like, oh, look how close I can get, you know. I always struggled with that and was kind of rebellious. So I would encourage you to think of it more as, again, a lifestyle. Like, because, again, if you're tempted with boundaries, how close can I get? You're going to fall. You're going to cross that boundary eventually, and then it's a mess. And so in those cases, for me, again, it's a lifestyle. It's what am I comfortable doing? If I were dating my wife, would I want Pastor Lucas seeing what I'm doing? You know? Like, ask yourself those kind of questions. Think about situational awareness, right? Am I doing something that I wouldn't want my parents, my friends, my pastors to see? And it could be anything. It doesn't, I mean, obviously we're all here, we're talking about sex, but it could be any manner of things. And I think that will help you. You understand boundaries, you understand communication, that situational awareness in a relationship, it'll help you if you do get married, right? Don't try not to think just tonight or today, all of us are sitting up here saying, don't have sex. You know, like, think past just today, think past those situations, think about all the different types of situations you may encounter, and learn how to have a relationship that is God-honoring through your dating season and your period.
Yeah, I think too, just with all of that, figuring out like what do you want to base your relationship on? Do you want to base your relationship on, you know, if he's a great kisser or if she, you know, holds your hand the right way, or do you want to learn about that person, you know, if they treat their mom nice, if they are going to open the door for you, if they're going to make you a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. You know, that the sexual stuff is going to come, and it's going to come later. And if you want to build a relationship and actually learn about that person, you want to put that stuff on the back burner because it's really easy to get caught up in that. And I think another thing outside of the sex conversation is something that we saw a lot when we were dating, not really in our own relationships, but we saw it in our friends and in our, you know, students and stuff, is like the whole conversation of, you know, are you going to hang out with members of the opposite sex? Are you going to be texting people? You know, what does that look like? What does that trust look like? And so we had really clear conversations on what am I comfortable with? What are you comfortable with? Who can we talk to? Who can we, you know, what is this going to look like? And, you know, we decided pretty early on that, you know, I had a lot of male friends, you know, that were Sean's friends, that were kind of my people.
Who were all better looking than me.
Just kidding. But, you know, just deciding, like, who do I feel comfortable with hanging out with? Who does he feel comfortable being hanging out with? If I had guy friends who, you know, maybe didn't get along with David as well, then that kind of had to turn into a conversation of, is that someone that I should be spending time with by myself? You know, my best friend, maybe we can go take her out to coffee whenever he wants. That's totally cool. I trust her, I trust him. I know that we are all friends, and kind of just like including your friends groups and building that trust, I think is really valuable. If that makes sense.
I was going to say something. Yeah, I mean, boundaries ultimately are what are going to set you up for success here. And so I think the big thing is, and we've kind of touched on it, but you have to figure out why you're setting boundaries. We are not putting, you know, nobody is saying to put boundaries in place because that's just what you do. And I can't, you know, like Amanda said, you know, you're not just setting a line and seeing how close you can get to it. It's, you are setting a boundary for a bigger reason. And I think you have to have the conversation of, yes, this is the boundary, but why is this the boundary? If somebody puts a red button in front of you because if you hit that red button, you know, the whole world's gonna blow up. You know you're never going to touch that red button. But if they just put a red button in front of you and say don't touch it, I kind of want to touch the red button. You have to figure out why the boundary's there. And it has to be a conversation. And like she said, we've talked a lot about sex in the last 15 minutes, but it's not just that. It's not just physical. You have to figure out, socially, what is our boundaries? Are you seeing other people? DTR. Do it.
Define the relationship.
Thank you. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, you've got to figure those things out early. And so those conversations can be uncomfortable, but do it. It's worth it.
I think it also helps to have accountability in someone outside of the relationship to ask you questions. I told my friends, my close friends, if I'm ever dating someone, ask me questions, because I might be really in love and I won't know, I won't have as clear discernment in the relationship or at the beginning of a relationship, and so having them ask me questions with things that I might struggle with in the relationship would be really helpful.
Well, can we give it up for these very grateful. I know most of you, not all of you, but most of you really well, and so it's grateful that you guys would make the time to come to love on our students. And students, I want to encourage you guys. There were still other questions we didn't get to, and so they're here. They're awesome church people, and so you're going to rub shoulders with them. You're going to see them around campus. You're going to see them in small groups, and so I'm going to encourage you, if your questions weren't answered, feel free to ask them. Feel free to ask myself. And if for whatever reason you're thinking right now that you have a few other questions and maybe you want to ask somebody up here, so I'd encourage maybe snag them right when we're done here in just a few minutes, or just the next time you see them here on campus. Feel free to ask them. We are all for you, and so we love you guys like crazy, and we want to support you. And so actually I'd like to just take a minute here. If all of you high school students, I want a few leaders to pray over you guys. So if you all will stand up, it'd be easier to stand up and kind of scoot in closer to them. And if leaders, if you want to surround them, I think it'd be great for us to pray for you students about this particular topic specifically, just to encourage you guys. And so students kind of pack in, be a little closer, it's okay. Get a little closer, get a little closer. And leaders, if you just kind of want to be around them, and I think I'm going to have just maybe Matt, if you want to pray for us and pray for the students specifically. And so know that we're for you, and that we care for you guys like crazy. And so I'm very, very grateful for these leaders to be as vulnerable as they were today, and for you to see that this is a battle. This is not something that's very black and white. It's difficult. And so Matt, if you would pray with the students, that'd just be a phenomenal thing, brother.
Dear Father, I just thank you for this time, for the opportunity to be here with these other awesome adults to be able to speak into these kids' lives. I just thank you for the grace you've given all of us from the things we've all struggled with, that we're able to just pass ours on to them so they may avoid those pitfalls and that they may keep their eyes on you. I just pray that you just let seeds be planted in hearts, that you just let your words that flow through us just sit with them, Lord. And while they may not understand it now, they'll just hold on to that, so when those situations come up, Lord, they'll have that to turn to you and know the right way. I just pray that you let them be vulnerable, let questions arise that they may be able to ask either us, their parents, or close mentors, and so that they may be able to seek wisdom, or to seek wisdom, especially godly wisdom. I just pray for favor in their lives, that they may be able to just have a life that glorifies you, but that even if they have fallen short, Lord, that they remember that you are just a gracious, loving God, that you love them, and that you love them just as much as you ever have. So I just thank you for them, and thank you for just their attentiveness, and that you can just let them hold on to your word and do some of these questions. Yeah.
Thank you, Matt. Hey guys, go ahead and set a seat. Leaders, you guys as well. You guys can sit back here with the